Good afternoon, everyone. It's a delight to be with you on this chilly October day. I've just finished visiting Gateway Community College up in Northern Kentucky and was able to visit with several of the higher ed partners and district superintendents from that region. And we talked about a lot of the innovation that's happening across the state, but particularly in Northern Kentucky. So kudos and hats off. It was great to connect with many of you there. We have a fairly light agenda that we'll move through, I think, quickly today. I'll cover the agenda with you. Tony's out dealing with some family medical issues today, so I'll cover the communications updates. I'll speak briefly on the charter school regulations that the state board just passed. I know there's a lot of interest and contention around those, so I'll just give you briefly my perspective on it. A lot has been written on it already, so I won't belabor that, but just want to be on record with sort of my perspective on those. We also, of course, have the school report card release today and the information related to that. I know that you've seen it all before as you had advanced access, but just some of the messaging and statements that we've been making around that data coming out. We'll also have Rhonda Sims on to clean up anything that I say that isn't right. So Rhonda can answer any technical questions that we have, and she'll be available later for us as well. I'll have a brief update about our flood impacted districts and some requests that we have from them going forward. Thomas Woods Tucker and Superintendent Turner from Boone County are on to talk a little bit about the equity playbook and some of the work that we have going underway with that. We have a brief United We Learn activity all focused on community engagement and how you're going about that in your community. And so we'll ask you to engage and share some things happening in your school districts. And then we'll end up with Q&A and next steps. So that's what our agenda looks like today. Let's go ahead and jump into the comms updates, please. Thanks, Jen. So we're currently developing and pulling together our United We Learn Council. And the purpose of this really is to advise the department and me and the state board just on how things are going with United We Learn and the three big ideas around deeper learning experiences for students, innovations, particularly around assessments, and developing those collaborative and engaging relationships with people in our communities, including our students, our parents, our teachers, and people that are out in the business community. So those are the three big ideas that are in United We Learn. And what we're wanting out of this effort really is to get ongoing feedback from people who are practitioners and who live across the state of Kentucky around how things are going. What communications do we need to make, and sort of have a way to have senses into the state around these efforts so we can adjust and provide supports or change direction as we need to based on how that's going. So look for more information on this United We Learn Council. Again, it'll be an advisory that we're pulling together. We want it to be really diverse and reach all parts of the state. So it's intentionally being designed to do that, much like the work of the coalition that put together the United We Learn report initially. And we encourage all of you to share things that are happening in your districts that track back to one of those three big ideas related to United We Learn. And there are hashtags and social media presence where you can link to that. And we'll do our best to amplify those great things happening in your communities from the department's perspective. Next slide, please. One great example that we would hold up, and I always like to share just good things that are happening in our public schools, but a good example of our focus, excuse me, today, which is around collaboration with communities. The Second Street School in Frankfort took their fifth graders out into the community where the fifth graders interviewed business leaders as part of their culminating projects. And so this is a great way to develop that engagement connection between students in the community, get them out in the community where they're able to build those connections and build that support for the public school system in Frankfort. So great example. Kudos Frankfort Independent Schools and Second Street School for bringing us that example. So something you might think about in your districts, how might you get your kids out in the community in some ways that perhaps build on the things that you already have going. Next slide, please. We have nominations open for the 2022 Kevin M. Nolan and Marianne Miller Award. It recognizes an executive branch employee for outstanding service to Kentucky Public Schools. Nomination deadline is due November 21st. So if there's anyone in mind that that any of you can think of that meets that criteria, please send in those awards. The state board takes a lot of pride in trying to recognize good things and good people happening with public education, and the Kevin M. Nolan and Marianne Miller Award is one of those. Next slide, please. We want to recognize and celebrate Crittenden County's Mandy Perez, who was named the 2023 Teacher of the Year. We've had the chance to work with Mandy already at the Kentucky Department of Education. She was there yesterday with us and also Monday she was there with us yesterday as part of our release of the data for the test scores. So she was able to listen in and provide some feedback on some of the messaging that we had at KDE and listen in to our leadership team meetings. And so we're already involving Mandy as our Teacher of the Year. We still have Willie Taylor Carver Jr. on as well. So Willie will finish out this year as Kentucky Teacher of the Year. And then in January, we'll bring Mandy on and she'll have that sabbatical year really acting as a ambassador of the teaching profession across the state. Mandy is a middle school teacher in Crittenden County, and it was incredible to see the way her community turned out for her. They had a parade when she got back to Crittenden County after being named the State Teacher of the Year. So it was just an incredible show of support from her community. We also recognize Kelly Gates from Hopkins County as the Elementary Teacher of the Year, and Amber Sargent from Woodford County as the High School Teacher of the Year. So all of them were incredible, and that whole event was incredible. We also saw several other Teacher of the Year finalists. You can see their names listed here. So congratulations to all of you in communities where you had a finalist that was named. It's an incredible honor. We were able to get 171 applications, or at least one from every district in the state this year. We hope to keep that going. And so I really encourage you to think about teachers that are in your community and how you can celebrate them, even if they're nominated. That's a cause for celebration. So it's really a good reason for you to lift up a great teacher in your community and highlight the work that they're doing. Next slide, please. We had numerous school districts that we recognized as part of our continuous improvement summit for best practices. I was able to attend that myself. We had 800 people in attendance at that at the convention center underneath Rupp Arena there. It's a beautiful facility. Hats off to our Office of Continuous Improvement and Support and Associate Commissioner Kelly Foster for organizing this. It's an ongoing great event, but we were super pleased to recognize these districts for best practices at the summit. Next slide, please. Want to highlight the Bill Roby games that took place at the Kentucky School for the Blind. This is has been going on for many years. It's a wonderful activity. I know that we've got students from several districts that are attending the Kentucky School for the Blind, so it's a real opportunity for the kids to get out and have some fun. We also want to acknowledge and highlight the KBE Award, the Kelly Award that went to business and education leader Mike Hesketh, who's the owner of Superb IPC in Shelby County. Mike had the opportunity to be with us in person. He was also a member of the Kentucky Kentucky Coalition for Advancing Education that helped us craft the United We Learn vision. And he's an incredible advocate for public education in his community. He even carries around Shelby County's strategic plan with him wherever he goes, so he can pull it out and talk to people about it. And I called him on the spot during the board meeting that we had down in Logan County, and he had it with him. So sure enough, that would have been an embarrassing moment for Mike and all of us if he had not had it, but he did. He pulled it out and was able to talk about what Shelby County was doing. So congratulations, Mike, a great example of a partner for public education in the business community. Next slide, please. We also have some other awards coming up. The Kevin C. Brown Award, which will be awarded in February of 2023. Criteria for that is around recognizing a group, person, organization, district, school, or post-secondary institution who through policy or practice makes it a top priority to champion United We Learn, or fostering innovation, advancing policy recommendations that align with that work. So if you've got someone in mind who might be a good nominee, please send that in by November 21st. So there's another award opportunity. Next slide, please. Okay, so that was the fun stuff. we'll talk some about these charter school regulations. So as many of you know, House Bill 9 passed in the last legislative session that really sought to clarify and direct the funding challenges that existed in the prior charter school law. We don't currently have any charter schools in Kentucky, and that's largely because there was an ambiguity around how the funding and support for them would work, particularly around the local funding component. Also, questions around authority on authorization of charter schools, and the legislature wanted to have some pilots in place. So they attempted to do that in this House Bill 9 from the last legislative session. They directed local funding to pass from school districts to charter schools. They clarified the authority around authorizing charter schools and really created two different authorizing pathways, one for districts that were under 7,500 students and one that was for over 7,500 students, with those being over 7,500 students really have far fewer or far less latitude in deciding if they want to have a charter school that they authorize or not, and those under having a far greater latitude on that. So of course, both of those issues create constitutional challenges. When the legislature directs local funds, that is a constitutional question. And the legislature creating different rules for different communities also is a significant constitutional question. So we alerted the legislature to both of those problems. When they were considering House Bill 9, they declined to make any changes to House Bill 9 in response to that. So now we have both of these significant constitutional issues that appear in the statute that's now been passed into law, as well as a question around if a charter school meets the definition of a common school under the state constitution. So that probably needs to be resolved as well. So we've got at least three constitutional questions that we've identified at the Department of Education that give us pause or create concerns for us. I know several others have raised those as well. And then I think superintendents in the state have rightly pointed out there are several process problems with both the authorization process and with the transfer of funds and who is responsible for funding which students, where the money comes from and where it goes. So all of those are real challenges with the law. The law does not allow us on KDE's side a lot of latitude or flexibility to clear up those problems. It's quite prescriptive in what it said needed to be in the regulation, to the point that really in this case, we would have asked them not to ask the Department of Education and the Board of Education to put together regulations on it, because they went into such detail in the statute. You don't really need a regulation, but nevertheless, we were directed to do that, and we have. So I want to be on the record in saying that the changes in the charter school statute that we have were not my idea. They were not the department's idea. We were responding to what's required of us under the statute. We do continue to have constitutional questions about this law, as well as its feasibility and actually being implemented. It's the legal structure in Kentucky is such that questions around the constitutionality of this law will not go to the General Assembly. They've structured it where they can't be sued over this. So who gets sued is the entity that's enacting it, which in this case is me and the state board. So we will be the ones that will be named in the suit. And so in response to that, and out of the questions that we've raised around the constitutionality of this, we don't wish to expend our resources defending a law that we think has this many significant problems. So and I'll go on record again now in saying that if a constitutional lawsuit is brought up around the issues that I've just described, we will not expend the department's resources or time defending it. The Attorney General certainly can decide if he wants to step in and defend this legislation, but the Department of Education will not. We haven't seen any lawsuits yet, so we don't have anything to respond to. Certainly, I'm not going to go on here and say that we wouldn't defend anything under any circumstance. We'll have to look at what the suit, if it indeed comes, looks like, but we're not inclined to defend it based on these constitutional issues. So that's kind of an overview of the charter school legislation. I think the state board really struggled with passing this. They wrestled with it as well. They explored all of the technical concerns with the law. They explored all of the constitutional questions that came with the law. But at the end of the day, what we advised them was you have a responsibility under the law to move forward these regulations. And I had a responsibility to bring these regulations to them. So that's what we're directed to do under the law. We also have a prior court case that states that we are to assume laws are constitutional until they are proven otherwise. And so even though we have these questions, it's really not up to me or the state board to decide the constitutionality of these questions. That'll be something for the courts to ultimately determine. So we'll see what happens with that. Okay, enough time expended on that. Let's move on to the next item. Okay, out of the frying pan into the fire. Let's talk about a test score release. We did make available to the public this morning the school report card and the accountability data that was created under Senate Bill 158 from a couple of years ago. We have not been able to implement Senate Bill 158, which creates this new color-coded system of accountability for the state because of the disruptions related to testing that came with COVID. But we do have sort of part one of what will be a two-part system on the school report card. When we have another year of data, we'll be able to fully flesh out this new school report card and the color coding system to include both status, so where schools and districts are, as well as growth or improvement. And some of you may have seen this sort of red to blue color coded system that takes into account both status and growth and arrays schools and districts based on that color coding system on the school report card. I've tried to be clear, and I think our team at the department have tried to be clear that the data that's coming out and the proficiency numbers that we have in this year's school report card should not be compared to previous years. We have changed the standards, we've changed the assessment, and we've changed the accountability system all during the pandemic. So we really shouldn't be comparing it back to prior year's data, although I think it's safe to say that the numbers that we're seeing are reflective of the disruptions to learning that occurred during the pandemic. So they're lower than they probably otherwise would have been. And that it will take us a great deal of time and energy that's already happening in schools to recover from this. There's nothing in this data that is surprising to us. It wasn't surprising to me. As I saw it, it's reflective of what we've been hearing from our formative assessment data that's been collected locally. It's what we've been seeing nationally as other states release their data, and what we've seen with national and international test data releases. So a lot of consistency in what we're seeing here in Kentucky in terms of lower than expected numbers. I would say disappointing, but not unexpected. This is what I expected to see, that the disruptions to learning that occurred during the pandemic would show up in these assessment results. We did see some progress on ACT already, so some recovery in ACT. So that seems to be already starting to respond. We know that there's lots of energy going into this recovery from pandemic disruptions right now, and there's lots of federal money available to support that. So we should expect to see continued recovery and improvement happening with our schools as time goes on. And we know from data from other natural disasters and disruptions to learning that it is possible that students do recover from these disruptions to learning, but it takes a very intentional and focused effort. And so I know that that's happening in your districts. What we saw, at least in this first initial round of media reports, was largely reporting on the talking points that I've just mentioned around this data and merely presenting the factual information of what the data are. And we haven't seen yet a lot of the opinions or reactions. Those will probably come over the next couple of days. What I've encouraged the media and really everyone to do is to take a breath here. This is not unexpected. It's disappointing, but it's not unexpected. It is in line with what we've seen in other contexts. So Kentucky's experiencing the same challenges others are having. Those of you that are working in schools directly knew about this before today, and knew about it several months ago as you work directly with students and can see some of the gaps and challenges that they had. So we're going to have a brief period of probably blame and shame and histrionics and hair pulling and lots of behavior like that. But I would just encourage everybody to calm down, take a breath, and get back to work. This data represents a new baseline. It's where we are right now, but we know what we've got to do, and we know we've got lots of work ahead of us. And so let's get to it. So I think that's the work ahead. It doesn't do us any good for anybody to throw a fit or toss blame around. It does do us a heck of a lot of good to get to work. And so that's what I'm encouraging everyone to do. All right, let's move on. Before we do that, I did want to, I know we've got Rhonda Sims on. Rhonda, is there anything that you'd like to say just in response to the data release or anything that I've missed that you want to make sure we touch on?
You did an excellent job, Commissioner. Trying to get my camera to turn on here. I would remind people that as we look at the ACT data, as you mentioned, we're seeing a slight tick up when we look at the junior performance of this year. What may confuse people is we've also had pretty recently a national ACT release that is for the graduating class of 2022. And so that data is a little lower. But then we also have then how the current year juniors have performed, and that's in the briefing packet materials. But I think your message is exactly what we've tried to promote in our office. We appreciate everyone's work because, again, to administer the assessments, to do all the things that were necessary was really appreciated with the work of our districts and our local DACs and BACs. But thank you very much.
Thanks, Rhonda. And that reminds me of two quick points I want to make before we move on. One is that there will also be, as we get deeper into this analysis of the data, one of the reporters yesterday made a really good point around while we're identifying low performing schools, can we also identify schools that are sort of beating expectations? Not that that was a great idea. Where can we find the schools that really have defied what was the low expectations that came with these sort of post-pandemic or during pandemic data outcomes? So what can we learn from them? So that's something I think that on the department side, we can do some work on, thinking about where were districts and schools expected to be, who really beat the odds, and what can we learn from those bright spots. So that's an analysis that I think you can look for from us going forward. Another is that we saw there are always achievement gaps, opportunity gaps, equity challenges that are revealed in assessment data. And during the course of the pandemic, all of those challenges got wider. So whatever achievement gaps or opportunity gaps that we had previously, they are now exacerbated because of the pandemic, because kids that had less, have less, had even less support at home during the disruptions of the pandemic. So we know that we've got all of our kids we need to move forward and improve, and we've got kids that come from historically underserved or low-income backgrounds. We need to make sure that we're doing even more to help close those gaps and support them. And I also just want to echo Rhonda's sentiment that we really appreciate the work that happened in our districts to administer these assessments. And then within our own team at KBE, hats off to Rhonda and the OAA team, the Office of Assessment and Accountability, that really made all of this happen in spite of the challenges that they had. And also hats off to David Couch and the Office of Educational Technology, because all of this happened on the Kentucky Education Technology System. That is, a leading model of stability and high-speed access. So we really appreciate both those teams at KBE for helping pull this off as well. We'll transition now to just a quick update on Eastern Kentucky flood-impacted districts. We're so proud of the work that all of the districts that were flood impacted have done over the past few months to get open. It really has been an incredible and heroic lift. When the floods first happened, I was really skeptical, and I think some of the superintendents were, that they'd be able to get open at all this year, which the prospect of that after all of the disruption that we've lived through with the pandemic was really a difficult thing to have to face. And I know in those first few days, they were just trying to figure out where to start and what to do, but they quickly figured it out. and pulled together resources from their communities and contractors, and lots of help from outside entities. We got some help from the legislature, help from the federal government continues to percolate in. So we see progress happening, and we now have all of those districts open. There's still damaged schools. Some of those may not be recoverable. Others are going to take some significant time to fully recover from, but we're able to be, all those communities are now in school. So hats off to our flood impacted districts. Incredible work and energy on your part. I know that you've lived through a lot, but we all see it. We all notice it. We all witness and recognize it and are so proud of you. Our flood impacted districts wanted to make sure that they raised up with the coming of colder weather, which we're certainly experiencing today and will going forward into the winter. And the holidays coming up, that there may be philanthropic efforts to make sure that homelessness issues, food insecurity issues, gifts and presents for the holidays, all of those things, resources will be coming into Eastern Kentucky to help, again, stabilize and support families in those flood impacted communities. So we wanted to raise them up because they raised it for us. So be on the lookout for organized efforts to bring those kinds of supports into those communities. Okay, now we'll transition to Dr. Woods Tucker and Superintendent Turner from Boone County. They're going to do an update on the equity playbook and the next cohort ahead. So Dr. Woods Tucker, go right ahead.
Thanks, Commissioner Glass, and all of our superintendents and everyone who's on the call today. As you all are aware from our previous superintendent webcast, our equity playbook has launched across Kentucky districts. We launched them this fall and really excited about the progress we've made, as well as the professional development that's been offered. The equity playbook, as you know, is an initiative that aims to improve our state's 5 equity pillars, and they do align with United We Learn, which are culture and climate, high quality instructional resources, student achievement, disproportionality as it relates to discipline, and of course, utilization of funding and resources. And as you all know, these are 5 pillars, 5 big initiatives that you've been battling probably since the first time you assumed your role, either as a classroom teacher or as an administrator. Dr. Glass talked a little bit about the scores and the release of those assessment scores. I certainly believe that the work that we're doing with the equity playbook, as well as the tremendous work in progress we're making with Kentucky Letters, that's our literacy work, and our reading academies, are great examples that we can demonstrate to our parents, to our students, to our community, and to the media, that we're working hard to close these opportunity gaps. Now back to the equity playbook. At the center of our equity playbook is personalized executive coaching. And this is for each participant. Each school district has identified up to 8 participants, and we're providing that coaching free of charge. And for our teachers, they don't have to leave your districts. This coaching, this executive coaching, free coaching takes place in the district. And as you all know, when you look at effect size and and the impact on teaching and learning, teaching efficacy and instruction, we know that executive coaching is one of the more effective approaches to increasing student outcome. And so we're really happy to offer that. And one of our participating districts this fall is Boone County, who recently sent an entire team of its district folks and school leaders to participate in the equity playbook training that took place in their ed co-op. And we have Superintendent Turner here today, and he's going to share with us his thoughts about the equity playbook and its potential for helping students and educators in Boone County. Superintendent Turner.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate the time there. Just us as Boone County, we are 28 schools and programs for our students, and we're very diverse, like many of our districts across the state. We have 63 spoken languages in our homes. About 42% of our students are on the free and reduced lunch program, and we have about 14% of our students with disabilities. And we have gaps, and we have some TSI labels, just like many of the schools across the state. So we're no different than most. But and I think we also probably share the same mission, if you will. We always talk about the mission of our school district is to serve everyone that comes. If you're living in Boone County, we're going to serve you if you come to our schools. But also, coupling that with the fact that we know students have to, for them to learn at high levels, that they have to feel accepted, they have to feel loved, they got to know that we know them, we know their families, know their backgrounds. They need to know we care, know they can do the work, and know we'll help them. What's been really beneficial about this work with the Equity Playbook so far is it's keeping right in line, right in touch with a lot of the things we've already been working on over many years, trying to close gaps with our students and try to best serve all of our students. The people that we have in the program right now are all of our high school principals, some of our middle school principals. They're very, very pleased and very excited, and really like some of the work, especially the coaching aspect that was just mentioned, where there's that collegial relationship of working together, the informal accountability of talking with someone else on what are your goals, what are you trying to work on during this part of the school year, how's the progress going, and just continually touching base with them over a course of time. So they've also remarked to me and shared with me, and I was part of some of the training when they were here in our district, and it provides some structure, provides some processes and some strategies to some of the work that many schools and districts are already doing, again, about closing the gaps and trying to make sure we're giving opportunities to all of our students, especially to some of our students that need it the most. So far, we're early in the work. We've been very pleased with it so far. Our principals and our district staff are very excited about the work because it does couple with the work that we're already doing and provide some, some context, a little bit of background, but also some rubrics in which you can try to gauge, are you making progress? Maybe not necessarily progress with the students and their work right away, but are you making progress in moving some things forward? So it does help to provide some measures and again, some strategies and processes there.
Thanks, Superintendent Turner, and we're excited to begin our next cohort of districts, our next cohort of partners in this very important work in January. And then next fall, we'll start the third cohort, and really excited about presenting this opportunity to every district in the Commonwealth. And if you have any questions for me, please feel free to email me or call me. Many of you do have my personal mobile number.
Okay, Thomas and Matt, thanks, both of you. Anything else, Thomas?
No, sir, that's all I have. I will ask our superintendents and other leaders, please be on the lookout for updates relative to our reading academies, our letters, professional development, especially for our administrators. We do have lawmakers. We have a lawmaker on the Interim Joint Committee who's going through the letters training as well. We're really excited about that. And then you'll also get a reminder regarding the Council's Use of Time survey. So thank you for all the work you do, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that you are our superhero. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks, Thomas, and great job. And thanks also, Superintendent Turner, for joining in and sharing your perspective in Boone County and the work that you're doing there. We've been so impressed with all of the things that we've seen coming out of Boone County, so keep going. Next, we'll shift to gathering some information from you. I sent out just before this webinar started an activity or a link to an activity to ask you to drop in there just some things happening in your community based on this prompt. So you've been asked to give a breakfast talk at your local Optimist Club. It's a great opportunity to talk about big idea number 3, which is that collaboration with community. So how that's happening in your schools. So what are some ways that you're collaborating with your community? What example would you give about how people in your communities could become involved in supporting learning? So, and again, we ask that you jump in the link that I shared with you. So check your inbox for that. Jen's going to bring up some of the responses that we're seeing already. come in. And I will again emphasize that how we use this at KDE is we like to grab these examples of things happening in communities and then hang on to them, either to feature them with a Kentucky teacher story, or we use them when we talk with legislators, or I use them in example of examples when I go and visit different regions in the state or have meetings about things that are happening that people need to be aware of. So it's just a great way for us to gather information about how some of this is happening in our state. So I'll pause for just a couple of minutes and allow some of you to enter in some information. I see that some of you already have. We see Mike Stacy and Ralph Hamilton. Thanks to both of you for doing this. So I'll be quiet for just about 2 minutes. Let you enter in some data on your own, as well as read some of what other folks are writing. All right, I'll go ahead and just highlight a few of the ones that have come in. Thanks everyone who participated in entering some of that information. We see from Morgan County's Ralph Hamilton has noted the after-school program around social emotional support for students and the community partners coming in and collaborating with teachers around that. So thanks, Ralph, for bringing that to us from Morgan County. Mike from Beechwood talked about the problem project-based curriculum that's been underway in Beechwood for several years, and the opportunities that students have to interact with members of the community, including their seniors that are interning, doing co-ops, doing research projects. And I had the opportunity to visit Mike in Beechwood and see that firsthand. It really is a great example of some of the existing capacity that Kentucky has around this United We Learn vision that existed way back. So hats off to you, Mike, and the work that you're doing there. Got Casey County on here, the annual reality store Life 101 efforts to have business members come in and assist students in decision making about life. So really, it's kind of a mentorship program. Great idea, Barry, and appreciate that idea coming to Casey County. And also this sometimes needs to be lifted up again and again, inviting readers into schools. That was always one of the favorite things that I did as a superintendent, was go out and read in schools. But it's a great idea to ask community members to do that. Amy from Williamstown Independent has talked about her district's investment in the PBL approach, learning at Williamstown through a mobile classroom. Our mobile classroom is a school bus that has been transformed into an innovative learning environment that will provide opportunities for expanded learning within our community. And then she's got a picture of the bus in here and see the transformation that's taking place. I always think that's a great idea. Instead of auctioning off these old school buses that you may have that really you can usually just get a couple $1,000 for. I've seen districts do this with them, transform them into mobile learning spaces, and this is a beautiful job, Amy, that you all have done in Williamstown. Or also book buses or mobile libraries. There's so many good uses for these things that I've seen districts do. So hats off. That's a beautiful looking space that you created. Matthew on here from Owensboro Independent talks about the board meeting structure, and one of those is a luncheon where the board gets to have a conversation and also talk about the strategic plan. And also they've begun inviting community partners in to tell them about that, inform them on that strategic plan. So Matthew, that's a great example of getting that real-time feedback from the community about how things are going. Denise has got a reverse job fair where we ask employers to come in and set up job interviews with students. Great practice for kids and a great way to have your community see what your kids are really capable of. So super idea. Demetris on here from Fayette County, working on early childhood initiatives and bringing the community in to be part of that. And it looks like they just keep going here. I'll just highlight a couple of more. Thanks, Tracy from Greenup County, and the example that you've got here. Roby Fletcher from Lawrence County coming in, noting the L3 work that they've got here. John Jett from Perry in the annual college fair. Dustin from Clark County, their strategic planning event. So many positive things being noted in here. Thank you, everybody, for participating in that. If you haven't had a chance to enter your information, please go ahead and do that. Again, it's super helpful to me when I'm out being asked about how this is going around the state, or what are some examples that we're seeing. We're able to go back and look at these documents that you're creating right now, and have lots of examples that we can hold up as this is the good stuff that's happening in your public schools in Kentucky, and talk about that with folks. All right, I think at this point we'll flip over to our question and answer session. So Jen, I don't know that I had direct access to the questions, so they'll be surprises to me when we bring them up. Did we have any questions that came in during the course of our broadcast here?
Okay, so everybody, I'm pinch hitting here. I don't have access to that link.
Yeah, so you now see the importance of the incredible Tony Khan's Tatman to us, and we're barely able to function without her. Sorry. Let's see. Let's see. Well, let's do this. Since apparently neither you nor I have access to those questions, Jen, and again, Tony, we really miss her. She's out dealing with the family medical issue today. So Jen and I stepped up and pinch hit for her today. We'll look through those, and if there are any questions that are in those, we'll provide written response to those and follow up with everybody so you can see what our responses to any questions that came out. We apologize for not being able to do that here with you live. The next superintendent webcast will take place on November 15th. So please put that on your calendars. There's always things that are coming up. We may be able to preview the legislative session, talk more about some of the flood supports for flood impacted districts that I mentioned earlier. There's always something new that comes up that we're able to talk about on these superintendent webcasts. But we'll give you a little more time back on your day. I know that everybody's super busy. We appreciate everybody listening in. Thanks for all you do. Hang on out there. Keep going. You are so respected and appreciated. So thanks everybody for tuning in.